A successful tech entrepreneur returns to his hometown and discovers his first love running a humble food cart. But when he tries to help her, a 15-year-old secret emerges that changes everything they thought they knew about their past. Before we dive into this story, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories. Mr. Harrison, the Innovation Center plans look exceptional. Mayor Thompson's voice faded into background noise as Blake's attention drifted to something else entirely. A familiar aroma wafting through Heritage Square's crisp autumn air. Spicy. Sweet. A hint of smoke. His mind stumbled back 15 years, to summer evenings spent in his mother's kitchen, watching as Rachel experimented with her grandmother's recipes, adding her own twist that somehow always worked. The scent now threading through the square was unmistakably hers, that signature blend of spices she'd spent months perfecting. "Blake? Are you still with us?" The mayor's voice snapped him back to present. "Sorry, just..." He gestured vaguely toward the source of the aroma. "Would you mind if we took a short break? I'd like to check something out." Following his nose through the historic square, Blake weaved between tourists photographing the restored Victorian buildings and locals enjoying their lunch breaks on weathered wooden benches. The entire scene felt surreal. Here he was, 33 years old, a successful tech entrepreneur returning to his hometown to build a $20 million innovation center, and he was chasing a memory carried on the wind. Then he saw it. A modest food cart with a hand-painted sign reading Cooper's Fusion Skewers. A small queue of people waited, chattering excitedly about the sauce and how she never shares the recipe. Blake's heart stumbled over itself as he caught glimpses of the woman behind the cart, her honey-brown hair now shorter, but still curling stubbornly at the ends, just as it always had. Rachel. She was focused on her work, expertly turning skewers on the grill while chatting with customers. Her movements were efficient, practiced, like a dancer who had performed the same routine countless times. She looked different, more confident in her movements, though her face showed the wear of years that hadn't been kind. Blake joined the line, his pulse quickening with each step forward. He watched as she served customer after customer, each interaction warm but brief. Her smile, though genuine, held a weariness he didn't remember. Then it was his turn. "Welcome to Cooper's, what can I..." The words died on her lips as she looked up, the skewer in her hand frozen mid-turn. "Hello, Rachel." The grill sizzled in the silence between them. Her eyes, still that striking shade of green, widened with recognition, then quickly shuttered. She recovered smoothly, but Blake caught the slight tremor in her hand as she adjusted the heat. "Blake Harrison. Didn't expect to see you back in Ashbrook." Her tone was carefully neutral, professional. As if they were distant acquaintances. As if he hadn't once known the story behind every freckle on her nose. "I'm here for a project." Your food cart is doing well?" He gestured to the line behind him, immediately feeling foolish for stating the obvious. "It pays the bills." She handed him a skewer he hadn't ordered, muscle memory perhaps from years ago when she knew his preferences by heart. "That'll be $6. Their fingers brushed during the exchange of money, and Blake noticed her hand was calloused now, bearing small burns from years of cooking. A far cry from the soft hands that used to sketch recipe ideas in the margins of her notebooks. "You still use the same spice blend," he said softly. Something flickered across her face, pride perhaps or pain. "Some things don't change." She turned to the next customer, effectively dismissing him. "Welcome to Cooper's, what can I get you today?" Blake stepped aside, the skewer in his hand still untouched. He watched as she resumed her rhythm, her movements precise and practiced, while his mind reeled with questions. How long had she been here? Why hadn't anyone told him? The food cart looked well established, the regulars in line suggesting this wasn't a new venture. "She's been here about 6 years now," a voice beside him said. Blake turned to find an elderly woman watching him with knowing eyes. Started with just a borrowed grill and her grandmother's recipes. Built it up bit by bit. Everyone knows Cooper's Skewers, best food in the square. 6 years. She'd been here 6 years, making a life for herself in the very town he'd left behind. While he'd been building his tech empire in Boston, she'd been here, crafting her own success story one skewer at a time. The realization sat heavy in his chest as he finally took a bite. The flavors exploded on his tongue, exactly as he remembered, yet somehow better. More refined. Like Rachel herself, the recipe had grown up, evolved, but kept its heart. As he walked back to the mayor and his waiting team, Blake glanced over his shoulder one last time. Rachel was still there, silhouetted against the autumn sun, strong and steady in a way he'd never expected to find her. The simple food cart suddenly seemed more impressive than any tech innovation center he could build. She'd been here all along, he realized. While he'd been chasing success in bigger cities, she'd been here building something real, something that mattered. And he had a feeling that this chance encounter was about to change everything. The autumn morning was barely stirring when Blake walked through Heritage Square at 6 a.m., coffee in hand. He told himself he was just taking an early walk to clear his head before meetings, but his feet had other ideas, carrying him straight to Rachel's food cart. She was already there, setting up in the pre-dawn chill. Her breath came out in small clouds as she wiped down surfaces and organized supplies, a routine clearly honed by years of practice. She hadn't noticed him yet, and for a moment, he watched her methodically prepare for the day ahead. "Morning," he called out softly, not wanting to startle her. Rachel's shoulders tensed immediately. "We don't open until 11. "I know. Blake stepped closer, noting the dark circles under her eyes. "I thought maybe we could talk." "About what?" She continued her prep work, not looking at him. "The past is the past, Blake. We've both moved on." "Have we?" He leaned against the cart's frame, earning a sharp look from Rachel. "Because finding you here after all these years?" "Finding me?" Her laugh was bitter. "I never left. You're the one who went off to become a big shot in Boston." She aggressively wiped down her cutting board. "And now what? You're back to save the poor food cart vendor?" Before Blake could respond, a voice called out from behind him. "Mom, I got the supplies from Mr. Chen." He turned to see a teenage girl approaching, arms full of grocery bags. She had Rachel's honey-brown hair, but something in her jawline, the set of her eyes, Blake's stomach clenched as he recognized Drew's features in her face. "Thanks, honey." Rachel's voice softened. "Lily, this is an old friend. Blake Harrison." Lily's eyes widened with interest. "The tech guy? The one building the innovation center?" She set down the bags and extended her hand with a confidence that was all Rachel. "I'm Lily Cooper. I read about your AI projects for small businesses. The predictive inventory system is brilliant." Blake shook her hand, momentarily thrown by her enthusiasm. "You follow tech news?" "I'm taking AP Computer Science," Lily beamed. "Actually, I have some ideas about how AI could help small food vendors optimize their—" "Lily," Rachel interrupted sharply, "don't you have homework to finish before your shift?" The girl's face fell slightly. "Yeah, but—" "Now please." Lily gathered her backpack, shooting curious glances between Blake and her mother before retreating to a nearby bench. "She's impressive," Blake said softly. "She is." Rachel's voice held a warning. "And she's none of your business." A sharp gust of wind rattled the cart's awning, drawing Blake's attention to its worn condition. The whole setup, while clean and well-maintained, was clearly showing its age. "That awning's not going to last the winter," he observed. "I'll manage." Rachel began chopping vegetables with renewed intensity. "I always do." As if on cue, a man in a crisp uniform approached the cart, clipboard in hand. "Morning, Miss Cooper. Quarterly health inspection." Rachel's knife stilled. "That's not due for another 2 weeks." "New schedule." The inspector began his examination, making disapproving noises at the worn equipment. "Miss Cooper, this refrigeration unit isn't maintaining the required temperature. And this awning." He shook his head. "You'll need to upgrade these within the week, or I'll have to suspend your license." Blake watched the color drain from Rachel's face. "I can help with—" "No." Her voice was steel. "Thank you for the inspection," she told the official. "I'll have everything addressed by next week." The inspector nodded and left. Rachel braced both hands on her prep station, head bowed. "Rachel," Blake tried again. "Let me." "I said no." She straightened up, eyes blazing. "I built this business from nothing. Every piece of equipment, every recipe, every regular customer. I did that. Me. I don't need your charity." "It's not charity. It's—" "What? A loan? An investment?" "Thanks, but I've seen enough successful men trying to swoop in and save the day." She gestured toward Lily. "That's how I ended up a single mother at 19. The words hung between them, heavy with unspoken history. From her bench, Lily pretended to be absorbed in her textbook, but her tense posture betrayed her attention to their conversation. "Does she know?" Blake asked quietly. "About Drew?" "She knows enough." Rachel's voice softened marginally. "Look, I appreciate the offer, but we're fine. I'll figure something out." "I always do." Blake watched as she returned to her preparations, noting how her hands shook slightly as she chopped. He wanted to say more, to make her understand he wasn't trying to save her. He just couldn't bear to see her struggle when he could help. But he recognized the pride in her stance, the same determination that had made him fall for her all those years ago. "Mom?" Lily's voice floated over. "Maybe we could at least hear his ideas about the inventory system?" "Lily." Rachel's tone held a warning. "I'm just saying, if we could optimize our ordering, maybe we could save enough for the new equipment faster." Blake saw Rachel's resolve waver slightly at her daughter's practical suggestion. She looked between them, her tech-savvy daughter and her successful ex, and he could almost see her weighing her pride against practicality. "I should get back to my meetings," he said, stepping away from the cart. "But Lily's right. The inventory system is something any small business could use. The beta testing is free." He pulled out a business card and left it on the counter. "Just in case you change your mind." As he walked away, he heard Lily ask, "Mom, how do you know him?" "Really?" Blake didn't hear Rachel's response, but he could feel both their gazes following him across the square. He'd seen enough to know that Rachel's situation was more precarious than she'd admit, but he'd also seen enough of her pride to know that pushing harder would only push her away. Still, there was something about Lily's curiosity, about the way she'd immediately grasped the potential of his technology, that gave him hope. Maybe, just maybe, the daughter would help the mother see that accepting help didn't mean surrendering independence. The Harrison family home looked smaller than Blake remembered. Standing in the driveway, he took in the fading blue paint, the slightly overgrown garden beds where his mother had once tended her prized roses. After his father's passing last year, she'd finally decided to downsize, leaving Blake to sort through 30 years of accumulated memories. "The attic needs the most work," his mother called from the porch. "I never could bring myself to go through your father's old things up there." Blake nodded, already dreading the task. The narrow attic stairs creaked under his weight, dust motes dancing in the beam of his flashlight. The space was cramped, filled with cardboard boxes and old furniture draped in sheets. He began methodically sorting through them, creating piles for donation, storage, and trash. Behind a stack of his father's old engineering books, Blake found a wooden box he didn't recognize. It was plain, about the size of a shoebox, with a simple brass latch. When he opened it, his heart stopped. Letters. Dozens of them. All addressed to him in familiar handwriting. The postmark spanned several months 15 years ago. With trembling hands, he opened the first one, dated just after he'd left for college. "Dear Blake, I've tried calling, but your number's disconnected. Drew says you changed it, that you need space to focus on school. I hope this letter reaches you. There's something I need to tell you and I'm scared." Blake's throat tightened as he read about Rachel's discovery of her pregnancy, her initial panic, her hope that he would come home when he learned the news. The next letter was dated 2 weeks later. "Blake, why aren't you answering? Drew promised he'd tell you about the baby. He said you needed time to process it. But I saw him with Sarah Martinez at the diner yesterday and something feels wrong. Please, if you're reading these, just call me. Even if you're angry, even if you don't want to be involved, I need to hear it from you." Letter after letter revealed the unraveling of Rachel's life. Her parents' disappointment. Drew's gradual disappearance from her life. The whispers around town. Each envelope contained a piece of her heart, growing more desperate with each passing week. "Your mom won't let me pass the door anymore. Drew told everyone I'm lying about the baby being his, that I'm just trying to trap him. But Blake, you know me. You know I would never. The baby kicked today. I wish you could feel it." Blake's hands shook as he read through them all, watching Rachel's hope turn to confusion, then to hurt, and finally to resignation. The final letter was dated just days before Lily's birth. "Blake?" His mother's voice startled him. She stood in the attic doorway, concern etched on her face. "What are you?" She stopped when she saw what he was holding. "Did you know about these?" His voice was barely controlled. His mother's face fell. "Drew said she was trying to cause trouble, that she'd moved away to live with her aunt in Arizona. He showed us the text messages." "Text messages?" Blake laughed bitterly. "From Rachel's number? The same Rachel who didn't own a cell phone back then because she was saving every penny for culinary school?" "Blake, She was 19, Mom. Scared and alone. And we all just..." He couldn't finish the sentence. His mother sank down beside him, looking at the scattered letters. "Drew was so convincing. He said she was unstable, that she'd been seeing other boys. Your father and I thought we were protecting you from a scandal that would derail your future." She touched one of the envelopes gently. "We were wrong." Blake picked up the final letter, dated September 15, 2009. His hands trembled as he unfolded it. "Dear Blake, This will be my last letter. The baby's coming any day now and I need to focus on our future, mine and hers. Yes, it's a girl. I've decided to name her Lily after my grandmother. She's the only one who still believes in me. I don't understand why you never replied. The Blake I knew would have at least faced me even if just to say goodbye. Sometimes I wonder if these letters ever reached you at all. But it doesn't matter now. I want you to know that I'm going to give our daughter everything I can. She'll never feel unwanted or abandoned. I'll work twice as hard, love twice as much. She'll know she comes from strength, not shame. I'm not writing to ask for anything anymore. I just needed you to know that we'll be okay. I'm going to make sure of it. Goodbye, Blake. Rachel. The paper crumpled slightly in his grip as 15 years of missing pieces fell into place. All this time, Rachel had thought he'd abandoned her. Meanwhile, he'd left for college believing the rumors Drew had spread about her moving away with some other guy. Drew. His best friend. The man who had destroyed 3 lives with his lies. I have to go, Blake said suddenly, gathering the letters. Blake, wait. But he was already heading down the attic stairs, the box of letters clutched to his chest. He had 15 years of truth to deliver, and he couldn't wait another minute. As he drove toward Heritage Square, the weight of Rachel's words echoed in his mind. She had promised to give Lily everything, and she had, including the strength and independence he'd seen in the young woman helping at the food cart. Rachel had kept her word, building a life from the ashes of betrayal. Now it was his turn to keep a promise he'd never known he'd broken. Blake was halfway to Heritage Square with the box of letters when he saw the crowd gathering around Rachel's cart. At its center stood a man he hadn't seen in 15 years, yet would have recognized anywhere. Drew Mitchell, somehow both changed and unchanged by time. Slowing his steps, Blake watched from behind a maple tree as the scene unfolded. Drew's designer suit and carefully styled hair screamed success, but there was something practiced about his charm as he leaned against Rachel's cart. Come on, Ratch, Drew's voice carried across the square. People change. I've grown up, done well for myself in real estate. When I heard about Lily, I realized what I'd been missing. Rachel's hands never stopped working as she replied, funny how you heard about her right when Blake Harrison came back to town. Lily emerged from behind the cart, her eyes wide with curiosity and hope. You're really my father? Drew's smile widened. Look at you, beautiful just like your mother. He reached out as if to touch Lily's face, but Rachel stepped between them, her stance protective. Mom, Lily protested, I want to hear what he has to say. Blake's fingers tightened around the box of letters. He should step forward, expose Drew's lies right now. But something held him back. This wasn't his moment to interrupt. Tell me about yourself, Lily, Drew said, smoothly sidestepping Rachel's glare. I heard you're interested in technology? Like Blake Harrison's work. You know Blake. Lily's face lit up. Oh, we were best friends back in the day. Speaking of which, I heard his innovation center is going to revolutionize small businesses in Ashbrook. Must be exciting having him around, Ratch. Rachel's knife came down harder on the cutting board. What do you want, Drew? Can't a father want to know his daughter? Maybe help out financially? He pulled out a business card. I've done well, like I said. Real estate development. Actually, I've been looking at properties around here. I've got homework to finish, Lily said suddenly. But maybe we could talk more later? Drew's smile never wavered. Of course, sweetheart. I'll be in town all week. Lots of business opportunities to explore. As Lily gathered her books, Blake noticed her duck behind the cart's storage unit instead of leaving. Smart girl, she was going to eavesdrop. Drew lowered his voice, but Blake could still hear him speaking to someone on his phone. Yeah man, I'm here now. Harrison's definitely investing big in this dump. Prime real estate opportunity? No, just had to smooth things over with the ex. You know how it is, never paid a dime in child support, but now that there's money in the picture. He laughed. Please, she's been slinging street food for 15 years. One mention of back child support and she'll be begging for a settlement. There was a crash from behind the cart. Lily stood there, her textbook fallen at her feet, face twisted with hurt and rage. Lily, Drew started, but she cut him off. You never wanted to know me at all, did you? Her voice trembled. This is all about Blake's project. About money. Honey, you're misunderstanding. Don't call me that. Lily's voice rose, drawing attention from customers. 15 years. 15 years, Mom worked double shifts and saved every penny. 15 years, I wondered why my father didn't want me. And now you show up because you think there's profit in it. Drew's practiced charm cracked. Listen here, you ungrateful. Ungrateful? Rachel's voice cut through the air like a blade. Choose your next words very carefully, Drew. That's my daughter you're talking to. Our daughter, he corrected smugly. And speaking of that, we should discuss those missed child support payments. Unless you'd prefer to handle it through the courts? Blake had seen enough. He stepped out from behind the tree, the box of letters heavy in his arms. Actually, Drew, I think we should discuss a few things first. Like these letters you made sure I never received. The color drained from Drew's face as he recognized the box. Blake, man, I can explain. Save it. Blake set the box on the cart's counter. Rachel, I never knew about any of it. Drew told everyone you'd moved away, that the baby wasn't his. He intercepted your letters, fake text messages. Rachel's hands gripped the counter's edge. What? Mom? Lily moved closer to her mother, protective now rather than defensive. Drew's facade crumbled entirely. It was 15 years ago. We were kids. Blake had his full ride to MIT, you had your culinary dreams? I was just trying to... To what? Blake stepped closer, his voice dangerously quiet. To help? To protect us? Or to make sure you never had to face the consequences of your actions? I've got lawyers now, Drew threatened weakly. If you think you can. I think, Blake interrupted, you should leave. No. Before I forget that we were once friends. Drew looked between them, Rachel's cold fury, Lily's disgust, Blake's controlled anger, and something like fear flickered across his face. Without another word, he turned and walked away, his expensive shoes clicking against the cobblestones. The silence he left behind was deafening. Rachel stared at the box of letters, her hands shaking slightly. Lily stood frozen, processing the revelation that not only was Drew Mitchell her father, but Blake Harrison. I'm so sorry, Blake said softly. To both of you. I should have been here. Should have known something was wrong when you disappeared. I should have. Stop. Rachel's voice was thick with emotion. I need time to process this. Please. Blake nodded, understanding. He'd had the drive over to process the truth. They deserved the same courtesy. As he turned to leave, Lily's voice stopped him. Did you love her? Back then? Blake looked at Rachel, who was determinedly reorganizing her supplies, though he could see tears threatening to fall. Yes, he said simply. I did. The unspoken, I still do, hung in the air as he walked away, leaving mother and daughter to begin making sense of 15 years of lies finally exposed to the light of truth. Mom, look at this. Lily burst into their small apartment, waving a glossy brochure. The New England Culinary Institute is offering an advanced street food innovation program. It's perfect for you. Rachel wiped her hands on her apron, having just finished prep work for tomorrow. Honey, those programs are expensive and I can't leave the cart. It's weekends only and... Lily's eyes sparkled with excitement. They're offering 5 full scholarships to established street food vendors who want to expand their businesses. Rachel took the brochure, her heart beating faster as she read through it. The program was indeed perfect. Weekend classes, business development focus, and even a commercial kitchen certification included. But her eyes caught on the submission deadline, tomorrow. It's too late to apply, she sighed, setting the brochure aside. And besides, with the new equipment we had to buy. I already filled out most of the application, Lily announced proudly. All you need to do is add your personal statement and submit your signature recipes. Rachel stared at her daughter, torn between pride and exasperation. Lily. Mom, please. Lily's voice softened. After everything with Drew, don't you think it's time to chase your dreams again? Those words hit home. Rachel had spent 15 years putting her dreams aside, focusing solely on providing for Lily. But now, with the truth about Drew exposed and Lily nearly grown. Okay, she said finally. Help me with the application? They worked late into the night, Rachel pouring her heart into the personal statement while Lily typed furiously on her laptop. When they finally submitted the application minutes before midnight, Rachel felt something she hadn't in years, hope. 2 weeks later, Rachel was serving the lunch rush when a distinguished-looking woman approached her cart. Miss Cooper? I'm Diana Chin, director of the New England Culinary Institute's Street Food Innovation Program. Rachel nearly dropped her tongs. Oh, I submitted an application. Indeed you did. And I'm here because I'd love to taste the fusion skewers that garnered such enthusiastic recommendations from our local committee. Rachel's hands trembled slightly as she prepared her signature dishes. As she worked, Chef Chin asked questions about her techniques, her business model, her vision for the future. It felt less like an interview and more like a conversation between colleagues. Miss Cooper, I'll be direct, Chef Chin said finally. Your application was impressive. Your story, your dedication to craft, your business acumen despite limited resources. This is exactly what our scholarship program was designed for. Rachel's heart soared, then plummeted as a thought struck her. Who exactly is on your local committee? Chef Chin checked her notes. Let's see, several restaurant owners, a food critic, and, oh yes, Blake Harrison, given his involvement in local business development. Rachel's jaw tightened. Of course. Later that evening, she found Blake at his usual bench in the square. Did you arrange this? She thrust the acceptance letter at him. Blake looked up calmly. I'm on the local committee, yes. But Rachel, I only nominated you. Chef Chin and her team made the decision based on your merit. Why didn't you tell me? Would you have applied if I had? The question hung in the air. They both knew the answer. Mom? Lily's voice interrupted them. She was walking with Blake's assistant, Emma. Blake's been helping me with my MIT application. I hope that's okay. Rachel looked between them, her daughter's hopeful face, Blake's careful distance, the acceptance letter in her hand. The walls she'd built over 15 years felt suddenly heavy. Actually, she said slowly, maybe you could both help me with something. The program requires a video demonstration of my signature dish, and I could use an extra pair of hands. Or two. Blake's face lit up, but he contained it quickly. Whatever you need. They spent that Sunday in the cart, filming Rachel's cooking process. Blake handled the camera while Lily assisted with prep work, the three of them falling into an unexpected rhythm. Rachel found herself relaxing, even laughing as Blake struggled to get the perfect angle of her plating technique. The secret, she found herself saying, demonstrating her signature marinade, is in the timing. My grandmother always said cooking is like life. You have to know when to turn up the heat and when to let things simmer. Is that what we're doing? Blake asked quietly when Lily stepped away to get more supplies. Simmering? Rachel met his eyes, remembering the box of letters, the years of misunderstandings, the slow rebuilding of trust. Maybe, she admitted. But this time we're both watching the pot. The day ended with 3 perfectly filmed demonstrations and something else, a sense of possibility. As they packed up the equipment, Rachel watched Blake and Lily discussing coding algorithms, their heads bent together over her laptop. The sight didn't hurt like she'd expected it to. Hey, she called to them. Who's hungry? I think it's time I taught you both my grandmother's secret recipe for celebration skewers. Blake's smile was worth the risk of letting her walls down just a little. After all, her grandmother had also taught her that the best recipes aren't just about the ingredients, they're about who you share them with. Rachel stared at the rejection letter from Ashbrook Community Bank, her hands clenched around the paper. She'd spent weeks perfecting her business plan, running the numbers over and over, preparing for every possible question. Still, it hadn't been enough. Insufficient collateral. Limited business history. She read aloud, each word tasting bitter. Mom? Lily looked up from her laptop at their small kitchen table. What if we tried something different? Rachel sighed. Honey, I've tried 3 banks already. No, I mean really different. Lily turned her laptop around, showing a crowdfunding website. What if we let the community help? Your customers already love you. I don't know. Rachel began, but Lily was already typing. Look, we can share your story, offer rewards like cooking classes or catering packages. And with your new culinary program certification coming up. Lily's fingers flew across the keyboard. Plus, I've been learning about social media marketing in my business elective. Did you know your skewers already have their own hashtag? Rachel blinked. They what? Lily pulled up Instagram, showing her mother dozens of posts from customers sharing photos of her food. Hashtag Cooper's Cuisine is actually trending locally. As they worked on the campaign, Rachel felt her spirits lifting. This wasn't begging for handouts. This was offering value, building on the relationships she'd cultivated over years of serving her community. Across town, Blake sat in his office, staring at his phone. The crowdfunding notification had just popped up, and his finger hovered over the donate button. He could solve this problem with one click, one transfer. Don't even think about it, Emma's voice came from his doorway. She'd hate you for it. Blake sighed. I know. But nothing. Look at the campaign, it's already gaining traction. The whole town is sharing it. He looked closer at the page. The video Lily had created was professional and compelling, featuring customers sharing stories about their favorite dishes, the warmth of Rachel's smile, the way she remembered everyone's preferences. The rewards were cleverly structured, offering experiences rather than just food, cooking classes, private dining events, catering packages. His phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. "I could use some advice on the financial projections for potential investors. If you're free." Blake smiled. She was asking for help on her own terms now. Over the next few weeks, Heritage Square buzzed with energy around Rachel's cart. Food bloggers who discovered her through the campaign's viral spread began featuring her unique fusion dishes. The local paper ran a story about her journey from cart to upcoming restaurant, highlighting her acceptance into the culinary program. "Mom, look." Lily burst into the cart one morning, tablet in hand. "The Boston Food Scene blog just posted about you. They're calling your Thai Mexican fusion skewers a revelation in street food innovation." Rachel was too busy to respond immediately, juggling orders for a line that now stretched across the square. Her new prep cook, Sarah, hired with the first round of crowdfunding money, worked efficiently beside her. Later that evening, as they closed up, Blake stopped by with coffee. "The campaign's at 85% of your goal," he noted casually. 87%, Rachel corrected, unable to hide her smile. "Lily's Instagram strategy is working better than I expected." Speaking of strategies, Blake pulled out some papers. "I have some thoughts on your kitchen layout design if you want to hear them. Strictly professional opinion." Rachel took the papers, remembering how different this felt from his first offers of help. Now she was choosing to accept his expertise, not being rescued by it. "The ventilation system you suggested seems expensive," she said, reviewing the plans. "It is. But it's more energy efficient. You'll save on operating costs within 2 years." He pointed to his calculations. "See." They spent an hour discussing equipment specifications and kitchen workflow, Rachel taking notes and asking pointed questions. She'd learned so much in her weekend classes, could finally speak the language of business with confidence. "Oh, and one more thing," Blake said as he was leaving. "The owner of that empty storefront on Main Street, she's a regular customer of yours. Might be worth talking to her about lease terms." Rachel nodded, already mentally sketching layout plans. Her phone buzzed with another campaign donation notification. "Mom?" Lily called from inside the cart. "Mrs. Chin just shared our campaign with her whole restaurant association network." That night, Rachel sat at their kitchen table, surrounded by business plans, kitchen designs, and menu drafts. Her culinary program textbooks were open beside her laptop, which showed the crowdfunding page at 90% of its goal. She thought about how far she'd come from that scared 19-year-old girl. Every step had been her own, her recipes, her business sense, her determination. But she was finally learning that independence didn't mean refusing all help. It meant choosing when to accept it and on what terms. Her phone buzzed with a text from Blake. "Lily showed me her new social media marketing presentation. You've got quite the strategist there." Rachel smiled, looking at her daughter's laptop still open to the campaign page, now featuring professional photos taken by one of her regular customers. Sometimes the best help came from simply being seen, not as someone to save, but as someone worth believing in. She opened her business plan and began to refine the numbers again. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for the first time in years she was ready to face them not just with pride, but with confidence born of real achievement. When Drew Mitchell walked into Rachel's newly leased restaurant space, he carried himself like he owned the place. In a way, that's exactly what he was planning. "Rachel, baby, this place has so much potential." He ran his hand along the newly installed counter. "But you're going to need serious capital to make it work. Lucky for you, I'm feeling generous." Rachel continued unpacking boxes, not bothering to look up. "Not interested. At least look at the offer." He placed a folder on the counter. "I've done my research. Your crowdfunding campaign is impressive, but it's not enough for what this place could be. I'm talking franchise potential." She said she's not interested. Lily emerged from the back room, laptop in hand. Drew's smile didn't waver. "Honey, the adults are talking business here." "Funny," Lily replied, opening her laptop. "Because I've been doing some business research of my own." Rachel finally looked up, noticing the strange intensity in her daughter's expression. "Did you know," Lily continued, "that public records are fascinating? For instance, I found 3 different failed restaurants in Boston where you convinced owners to take on silent partners through shell companies. All 3 ended up bankrupt within a year, while the properties were flipped for massive profits." Drew's smile flickered. "You shouldn't believe everything you read online." "Oh, I don't." Lily turned her laptop around. "That's why I dug deeper. Found some interesting court records too. 2 other families in Connecticut? Kids you've never met? Moms you ghosted when they needed child support? You little... Drew started forward, but Rachel was already between them. Don't you dare take another step toward my daughter. Our daughter? Drew sneered. And speaking of that, I still have rights. Especially now that I know about Harrison's plans for this neighborhood. Blake's voice cut through the tension. What plans would those be, Drew? Everyone turned to see Blake standing in the doorway holding a stack of papers. Blake. Drew's charm switched back on instantly. Just the man I wanted to see. Listen, I've got some great ideas for property development around your innovation center. Funny timing, Blake interrupted, considering the expansion plans aren't public yet. Unless someone's been hacking corporate emails. He looked meaningfully at the laptop in Lily's hands. Drew's facade cracked. You think you're so clever, don't you? All of you. Rachel with her little food cart success story, Lily playing detective, and you, Blake, trying to make up for lost time by playing hero. The only one playing here is you, Drew. Rachel's voice was steady. You always were. Playing friend to Blake while sabotaging his letters. Playing father when you thought there was money to be made. Playing businessman when you're really just a con man. I am a businessman. Drew slammed his hand on the counter. And this whole block is prime real estate once Harrison's tech brothers move in. You really think a street food vendor can survive the gentrification coming? Face it, Rachel, you need me. Actually, Lily spoke up, what this block needs is exactly what Mom's planning, a fusion of old and new Ashbrook. Which is probably why she just got approved for the Main Street Preservation Grant. Drew's head snapped up. What? Rachel smiled. The announcement was supposed to be tomorrow, but yes. The Historical Society loved our proposal to maintain the building's original character while modernizing the kitchen. And with the community's support through crowdfunding. Plus, Blake added, the Innovation Center's Planning Committee is very interested in maintaining the neighborhood's current business mix. Especially successful local establishments with strong community ties. Drew looked between them, his schemes unraveling. This isn't over. I have rights. About that, Lily interrupted again. Remember those court records I mentioned? I sent copies to Mom's lawyer. Apparently, 15 years of evading child support is frowned upon. But hey, if you want to discuss rights in court. The color drained from Drew's face. Without another word, he grabbed his folder and stormed out. In the silence that followed, Rachel hugged Lily tight. When did you get so grown up? Speaking of grown up, Blake said, smiling, Lily, didn't you get some news today? Lily bounced on her toes. I got in. Early acceptance to MIT with a full scholarship. Rachel gasped. What? When? The email came during Drew's little speech. Seemed like the perfect moment to demonstrate my research skills. Tears sprang to Rachel's eyes as she hugged her daughter again. All these years of hard work, all the sacrifices. The restaurant door chimed as Sarah, their prep cook, poked her head in. Sorry to interrupt, but there's kind of a crowd gathering outside. They looked out to see dozens of their regular customers and neighbors assembled, holding signs reading, Congratulations Lily, and Cooper's Kitchen coming soon. How did they? Rachel started. I might have sent a few texts, Blake admitted. This community's been rooting for you both all along. They just needed a chance to show it. As they stepped outside to greet the impromptu celebration, Rachel felt Lily squeeze her hand. They'd done this, not through Drew's schemes or anyone's charity, but through their own strength and the genuine support of people who believed in them. Mom, Lily whispered, we made it. Rachel looked at her brilliant daughter, their growing business, and the community that had become family and smiled. Yes, we did. And we're just getting started. This isn't a business meeting, is it? Rachel asked, watching Blake fidget with his napkin in the dim light of Giovanni's restaurant. They sat in a quiet corner booth, well away from the windows facing Heritage Square. The remains of their meal lay between them, along with a half-empty bottle of wine that had gradually loosened the professional veneer they'd been hiding behind. Blake smiled sheepishly. I haven't talked about permits or equipment specs once all evening. Rachel took a sip of wine. And you chose a restaurant 20 minutes outside of Ashbrook because? Because I wanted to have dinner with you without the entire town watching through the window. He paused. And because I really like you, Rachel. So, again, always maybe. The honesty in his voice made her breath catch. They'd been dancing around this for weeks, lingering conversations after business discussions, casual touches that felt anything but casual, glances that held too long to be merely friendly. Blake. She started, but he shook his head. You don't have to say anything. I know you've built an amazing life and I would never want to complicate that. I just needed you to know. Rachel reached across the table and took his hand. You already complicate everything. In the best possible way. Their first kiss happened in the restaurant parking lot, sweet and tentative like teenagers, then deepening with 15 years of lost time. They agreed to keep things quiet just until they figured out what this meant. But secrets in small towns have a way of unraveling, usually at the most unexpected moments. A week later, Rachel was cooking dinner in their apartment when Lily arrived home early from her coding club. Mom? Why is Blake's car parked 3 blocks away? And why are there 2 wine glasses on the counter? The sound of running water in the bathroom stopped abruptly. Lily's eyes widened. Oh my God. Lily, honey, I can explain. Finally. Lily exclaimed, dropping her backpack. Do you know how exhausting it's been watching you two pretend to only talk about business? The bathroom door opened and Blake emerged, looking simultaneously guilty and relieved. So, you're okay with this? Okay with it? I've been hoping for it since I saw the way you looked at Mom's letters. Lily hopped onto a kitchen stool. Also, your car's really obvious. You should park it behind the grocery store instead. Better coverage. Rachel and Blake exchanged stunned looks, then burst out laughing. When did you get so sneaky? Rachel asked her daughter. Please. I'm the daughter of a street food vendor and a tech entrepreneur. Observation skills are in my DNA. Lily grinned. Also, you've both been happier lately. It's nice. The tension broken, Blake stayed for dinner. As they ate, Rachel watched him and Lily debate the merits of different coding languages, their enthusiasm infectious. It felt right in a way she hadn't expected. But old fears had a way of surfacing, even in the brightest moments. Later that week, as word of their relationship spread through town, Rachel overheard whispers at the market. Of course she'd end up with him, he's successful, could give her everything. The comments gnawed at her. That evening as they walked through the park, she voiced her concerns. I don't want to be seen as the charity case who landed the rich guy. Blake stopped walking. Is that what you think this is? No, but... Rachel. He turned to face her. You're the most independent, capable person I know. It's one of the things I love about you. You built a successful business from nothing. You raised an incredible daughter alone. You never needed saving. Then what do you want from me? His answer was immediate. Partnership. Conversation. The chance to love you without trying to change you. He smiled. Also, your Thai Mexican fusion sauce, but I've accepted that recipe's going to the grave with you. Rachel laughed despite herself. It's my grandmother's secret. See? Boundaries. I respect them. His expression grew serious. I spent 15 years achieving everything I thought would make me successful. But success feels hollow without someone to share it with. Someone who understands that true partnership isn't about rescuing or being rescued. As if to prove his point, the next day at the restaurant construction site, Blake watched without comment as Rachel negotiated firmly with contractors, only offering input when she specifically asked for his opinion. When she successfully argued down their price, his proud smile held no trace of surprise. The community gradually adjusted to seeing them together. Blake helping at the food cart during rush hours, Rachel attending Innovation Center meetings not as a vendor but as a significant other. They found their rhythm, a dance of give and take, support without smothering. One evening as they closed up the cart together, Rachel caught Blake studying her. What? Just thinking about that scared kid who left for college thinking he had to choose between love and success. He wrapped his arms around her waist. Wish I could tell him it's not either. That the right person makes you more successful, not less. Rachel leaned back against him. Wish I could tell my younger self that independence isn't about doing everything alone. It's about choosing who to let in. And you choose me? She turned in his arms, remembering all the paths that had led them here, the letters never received, the years of struggle, the gradual rebuilding of trust. Every day, she said and kissed him. From her spot at the window of their apartment above, Lily watched them with a smile, then turned back to her MIT acceptance letter, feeling for the first time that her future could include both her dreams and her family, just in a new, expanded form. Stop. Rachel's voice rang through the construction site, halting the demolition crew. That's not just any wall, it's part of the original 1920s architecture. It's staying. The crew chief looked dubiously at the exposed brick. Ma'am, the plans say. The plans are changing. Rachel pulled out her tablet, showing him the Historical Society's documentation. This wall is part of why we got the preservation grant. We'll work around it. As the crew regrouped, Rachel sighed, adding historic wall preservation to her ever-growing list of unexpected challenges. The past month had revealed asbestos in the ceiling, outdated wiring, and now this. Each discovery ate into her carefully planned budget. "Mom?" Lily burst through the door, her laptop cradled in one arm. "Wait till you see what I designed." The restaurant's logo filled her screen, a stylized food cart transforming into an elegant building with the words Cooper's Kitchen, from street to soul, in a modern yet warm typeface. The design captured everything: their journey, their heritage, their future. "Lily, this is..." Rachel touched the screen gently. "It's perfect. The gradient represents the fusion of traditional and modern elements," Lily explained excitedly. "And look, it works in both digital and print formats. I've mocked up the website too." A throat cleared behind them. They turned to find Drew standing in the doorway, looking expensively disheveled. "Touching scene," he drawled. "Shame about the construction issues. Heard the budget's running tight." Rachel straightened. "What do you want, Drew?" "To help, believe it or not." He held up his hands in mock surrender. "My investors are still interested. No strings attached, just straight equity funding." "Right?" Lily snorted. "Like those other restaurants you helped?" "You know," Blake's voice came from behind Drew, making him jump. "It's funny you should mention investors. The SEC seems very interested in your previous restaurant dealings." Drew's face hardened. "You wouldn't." "I already did." Blake stepped into the room. "Consider it 15 years of overdue consequences." For a moment, Drew looked like he might argue, but then his shoulders slumped. Without another word, he turned and left. They all knew it was for the last time. "Well," Rachel said into the silence, "back to work? These walls won't restore themselves." The next few weeks passed in a blur of activity. Rachel juggled construction decisions with menu planning and staff hiring. The food cart continued operating, now with a countdown sign to the restaurant's opening that brought daily encouragement from regular customers. "I might have a solution for your supply chain concerns," Blake mentioned one evening as they reviewed spreadsheets. "There's a cooperative of local organic farms looking to partner with restaurants. They're already supplying my Innovation Center's cafe." Rachel looked up sharply. "You waited to tell me this because?" "Because I wanted you to figure out your own supplier strategy first." He smiled. "But now that you've identified sustainable sourcing as a priority, I thought you might want to meet them." She leaned over and kissed him. "You're getting good at this supporting without directing thing." "I had a good teacher." The night before the opening, Rachel stood in the nearly finished space, running her hands along the restored brick wall. The kitchen gleamed with new equipment, while the dining room balanced modern comfort with historical charm. Lily's logo design graced the front window, already drawing curious looks from passers-by. "Having second thoughts?" Blake asked, joining her. "No." Rachel smiled. "For the first time, I'm having no thoughts. It just feels right." "It's amazing, Mom," Lily said, entering with a stack of menus. "Oh, and since everyone's here, I made my decision." Rachel and Blake turned to her expectantly. "I'm accepting MIT," Lily announced, "but I'm deferring for a year." "What?" "But honey, you don't need to." "I want to," Lily interrupted. "I want to help get the restaurant established. Plus, I've already got a remote internship lined up with Blake's tech team to work on that small business software we discussed. It's perfect timing." Rachel felt tears threatening. "Are you sure?" "Mom, you spent 15 years putting me first. Let me put you first for 1 year." Lily hugged her mother. "Besides, this place is part of my legacy too." Blake watched them with suspiciously bright eyes. "Speaking of legacy," he said, pulling out a small box. "Rachel, I'm not proposing, not yet. But I want you to have this." Inside was a key. "For the house on Cedar Street," he explained. "I bought it, well, my mother's old house. I thought maybe when you're ready we could make it our home. All of us." Rachel looked at the key, remembering the letters hidden in that house for so many years. Now it offered a new beginning. "The attic needs work," she said finally, smiling. "But I think we can handle it." As they locked up that night, Rachel paused in the doorway. Through the window, she could see Lily's logo illuminated, the food cart silhouette a proud reminder of where they'd started. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for the first time in her life, she felt completely ready to face them. She had her daughter, her dream, her partner, and most importantly, she had herself, stronger and more certain than ever before. The final recipe wasn't just about food, it was about finding the perfect blend of independence and love, tradition and progress, past and future. And like all the best recipes, this one was meant to be shared. Dawn broke over Heritage Square, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Rachel stood before her food cart, running her hands along its worn edges one last time. In a few hours, Cooper's Kitchen would open its doors, but this moment belonged to where it all began. 15 years earlier, she'd stood in this same spot, a terrified 19-year-old with a borrowed grill and her grandmother's recipes. She'd had nothing but determination and a 3-month-old baby sleeping in a carrier behind the cart. "I thought I'd find you here." Rachel turned to see Lily approaching, dressed for the restaurant's opening ceremony but carrying 2 of their original aprons. "One last cart breakfast?" Lily suggested, holding out an apron. Together they fired up the grill one more time. The familiar sizzle of marinated meat, the dance of avoiding each other's elbows in the tight space, the smell of that secret spice blend. It felt like a prayer, a thanksgiving, a goodbye. "Remember when I was little?" Lily said, expertly flipping skewers, "and I insisted on taste testing everything? You were the world's smallest quality control expert." Rachel laughed. "You'd scrunch up your nose and say, 'More pepper, Mommy?'" They finished together. The sun climbed higher as their regular early morning customers began stopping by, each sharing memories of years of breakfasts at the cart. By the time they needed to head to the restaurant, Rachel's heart felt full and ready. Cooper's Kitchen gleamed in the morning light. The restored brick walls glowed warmly, while Lily's logo design drew admiring looks from the gathering crowd. Inside, Sarah coordinated with the staff, all wearing uniforms that echoed the cart's original aprons. Blake stood slightly apart from the crowd, letting Rachel and Lily take the spotlight. When Rachel caught his eye, he mouthed, "Proud of you," and her heart swelled. Mayor Thompson stepped forward to cut the ribbon, but Rachel shook her head. "Lily," she said, offering the scissors to her daughter. Lily took them, then turned to address the crowd. 15 years ago, my mom set up a food cart in this square with nothing but hope and a secret recipe." Her voice carried clear and strong. "She taught me that success isn't about what you have, it's about what you're willing to work for. That independence means choosing your path, not walking it alone. That love, like the best recipes, gets better when you share it." Rachel felt tears threatening as Lily continued. "Today, Cooper's Kitchen opens its doors. But it's more than a restaurant. It's a testament to every person who believes in their dreams, every parent who shows their child what strength looks like, and every community that comes together to help those dreams grow." The ribbon fell away to applause. As guests flooded in, Rachel noticed that no one mentioned Drew's absence. His shadow no longer held power here. The day passed in a blur of congratulations and celebrations. The kitchen hummed with energy, every dish perfect, every customer beaming. But the moment that stuck with Rachel came later, after the crowds had gone. "I have something to show you," Blake said, leading her to Heritage Square. The food cart sat in its usual spot, but it had been restored, gleaming like new. A small plaque on its side read, "Where Cooper's Kitchen began, serving Heritage Square every Sunday." "You restored it?" Rachel whispered. "Lily's idea. She said some traditions should continue." Blake took her hand. "Speaking of traditions." He knelt on the cobblestones where they'd reunited months ago. "Blake. Rachel Cooper, you amaze me. Your strength, your determination, your heart. Loving you isn't a choice, it's as natural as breathing. Will you marry me?" "Yes," she said simply, and the square erupted in cheers. Their friends and family emerged from hiding spots, Lily leading the celebration. Months later they gathered again in the square, this time to send Lily off to MIT. Her gap year had seen the restaurant flourish and her software innovations implemented in small businesses across town. "Call me every day," Rachel said, hugging her daughter. "Every other day," Lily negotiated, grinning. "And I'll be home for Sunday cart service." After Lily's car disappeared toward her future, Rachel and Blake walked home hand in hand. In their kitchen, the one that had once felt too small for her dreams, Rachel pulled out her grandmother's recipe box. "Really?" Blake asked, eyes widening. "The secret recipe?" "Well," Rachel smiled, "you are family now." As she taught him the precise blend of spices, the exact timing of each addition, Rachel realized that some recipes weren't just about food. They were about all the ingredients life offered: love and loss, struggle and success, independence and partnership, mixed together in just the right proportions. And as Blake earnestly measured spices, as their newly shared home filled with familiar aromas, as photos of their blended family watched from the walls, Rachel knew she'd finally perfected her most important recipe of all, the recipe for happiness. It had taken 15 years, but every ingredient, even the bitter ones, had been necessary to create something this sweet. If this story touched your heart, remember to like and subscribe for more moving narratives that celebrate the strength of the human spirit. Share your own stories of resilience and second chances in the comments below. Your journey might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And here's a special question for our community. If you owned a food cart or restaurant, what secret family recipe would be your signature dish? Let us know in the comments.